No. Not yet. 1 minute. Oh, shit. I left my glasses.
I'm giving it to you before I give it to those roots.
I know, right?
I gotta figure out how to jip it. Send it to me, I can jip it. It's 23 minutes, dude. That's fine.
No, it really is. You just need one of those. Pick the one where it's mostly just like 2 or 3 steps. Just that piece right there.
It's like more coconut now earlier. Yeah.
Or, because I do have to get them set up because I figured it'd be a good one to come out of break. The end of the keg.
All right, get set, boys. Audio is live.
Or depending on delays.
I'm going to go probably Wednesday. I'll have it.
Probably. And it's coming basically straight down I-10.
Pretty much.
Oh, the timer went away. We're looking at 70s retro now.
Just as good.
Hey, 70s retro station's on.
Is that you? That's me, yeah.
70s Retro here at Texas Common Brew Radio. 30 seconds. We'll be ready to go. It turned red. It turned red.
Ah! Alarm!
Rojo Vente.
Did it send?
Does that
Or
mean
is it sending?
the large red? Rojo Vente?
So, Brandon, that tilt's on its way from Santa Rosa.
Sweet.
So, I should have it Wednesday, maybe.
You're on.
10.
Well, now there's another countdown. Are you
We
sure?
have to
we're
do
on?
another. We have a countdown for the.
Oh, okay, we are on.
Oh, hey, hi.
Hey. Hello.
Welcome back.
Welcome back to Come and Brew Radio. That was the lovely sounds of the Many-Colored Death out of Columbia, Missouri. Please go on iTunes or Google Play Music or Stitcher, or not Stitcher.
That's us.
Spotify. That's it. Spotify. Go check them out. Great band. Good friend of mine. And so we are back from the break here now. Tom has a surprise that he's dropping on us here that we're going to talk about real quick before we get into the light lagers. So I'm going to kind of hand this over to him and let him tell us what we're about to drink here.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Well, we were talking earlier about some of the flexibilities that doing a brew pub lets us do, and this is a bottle release that we did. We did release it through our distributor. It is a Saison that's been aged in the Cabernet Sauvignon
Oh, nice.
Cask for a year. So
Ooh, a year.
This is our Wonderlust that was actually aged in a Cabernet Sauvignon. So we did 2 versions of this. We did the Cabernet Sauvignon and we did the Chardonnay. This is the Cabernet Sauvignon. We kept a whole bunch of it to sell at the brewery, make it a brewery, a very specific brewery release. We did release some out to specific beautiful accounts of ours. But that's some of the flexibility that it gives, the brew pub gives us, is the ability to do something, again, making Rabbit Hole a destination, something you're going to come up here and you're going to be able to find out some different bottles. So those bottles that I mentioned about the Midnight Snark in the Witherspoon bourbon barrels, a lot of that's going to be at the brewery. Now, we'll get some out to the market for sure, but you'll get a good chance to get it at the brewery. Same thing. We actually still have School of Bach, which is our ice Bach that was released early.
Oh, do you still have that? Really?
In March, and we haven't put it out for sale yet, but we will actually put some of those bottles out for sale specifically because we can offer them out. So
That's a secret, though. Don't tell anybody.
yeah, please don't tell anybody.
We'll just keep it between us.
Yeah.
Just us.
So
is wonderful.
I really like this. A few breweries are doing this now with the wine barrels as opposed to whiskey barrels. And RAR put out that Midnight Cab. It was a dark saison that they did in Cabernet barrels. And I really like that wine barrel flavor as a completely different character than you're going to get out of the bourbon barrel or anything like that. And this actually carried a lot of the wine flavor into it too.
For the Cab it did, and for the Chardonnay. So I mean, the two are two completely different beers, and that's the beauty of it. When someone comes up and goes, "Well, which one, should I buy?" and I go, if you're into trying unique beers, try them both because they are totally different. So out of the Cab, I think you get what you expect out of good Cabernet Sauvignon, some deep, dark fruit. You get a little bit of the spicy on the end and a good oak finish.
It's got the tannins too. The tannins pulled through from it, which
It really reminds me of the beer that we did with Cody 2 years ago.
It does, except that we didn't have any tannins in that. And
it's
this
just
does,
it's
gives
got
you
that similarity.
that real wine character, almost like you're drinking maybe a wine with beer added to it. The wine character is very pronounced in it, and it melds really well with the saison.
And sometimes the Belgians do that with their saisons. They take on a wine-like characteristic. Now, the Chardonnay, I'll give that I'll give some counterpoints on that one. That's a beer that surprised me. That not that it was good, but how it turned out. So that malolactic fermentation that you get with a Chardonnay can be very interesting, right? I mean, most of the time when we think about it and we go, yeah, it tastes like butter, that's a bad thing in beer.
Yeah.
So a lot of times Chardonnays, they're oak aged because they want to oak age out the butter flavor. Some of them will embrace it. What we got actually from the Chardonnay casks that we did was we got this tropical fruit punch up front, which really blended well with the other fruit flavors we had in our saison. Got a little bit of the oak, and then just a slight mouthfeel of that malolactic fermentation, a little bit of the butter on the end, which actually was very pleasant instead of being distracting. As something, we talk about diacetyl, we don't want it.
Kind of a very smooth flavor and feel to it.
Yeah. So
And my wife is a big fan of the Chardonnays that have the buttery taste to them. I recently went to the store. There are actually 2 different Chardonnays called Butter.
right.
It's the name of the wine. I thought,
Yes.
man, talk about hitting it on the nose. That's interesting. But I think it's kind of an overlooked thing, and maybe something that you'll see more coming into the future with the marriage of wine flavors and beer flavors, which can be, like you were saying, very opposite things. There are things that come through in wine that are off flavors in beer
Right.
that you don't want, apple and pear and that kind of thing that would be a sign of a bad fermentation in a beer, and butter and that kind of thing. But if they're done right and if they're melded right, and then you put the added component of the oak in there, it can really create a whole different animal that you can't get any other way than that.
Right now, so if you'll let me introduce this one. So the last time that we were on, I gave out some recipes on the air, and we talked about stuff. And actually, you guys still sell the Rapture Fusion Brown Ale kit. That's I remember talking with Greg, and he worked out the kit conversion of what our beer was as a commercial calibration, if you will. And somebody that's sitting at this table has actually brewed that. Have they not? And they're going to let me try it.
I have, and I would be glad for you to try it because it is one of my favorite beers of all time.
And this is one I've had this numerous times. I bet 10 different brews from home brewers that have brewed this kit that I've had, and several of them I've thought were just absolutely spot on. This is one that I've had a lot of clone brews in the past, and I've bought some before when I was a beginning brewer. This is a beer that I really honestly feel that even a beginning brewer can buy this kit, brew it, and it will come out tasting like this beer, which is the exception and not the rule, in my opinion.
Very much so.
A big part of that, I think, is because a lot of these places selling clone kits are guessing at the recipe. We actually got it from you guys, which
No.
makes a big
versions
difference.
Does that help?
That were a little bit off. We're still really close to the original.
Right. In my opinion, the ones that have been off, it's been a yeast or a fermentation thing.
Mm-hmm. It's
not
usually a
recipe
problem
thing.
on their end. It's not the recipe.
Yeah, I'll tell the story real quick. I remember getting a comment on Facebook once from someone who had gotten this kit and brewed it and tagged us on Facebook and said, "Hey, this is a really great beer that I just brewed. I'm really enjoying it." So we responded on the corporate Facebook page thing and said, "Hey, would we love to try it? Bring it up at the brewery sometime. We'd love to give it a try." And their response was like, "Well, I'd love to, but I'm in California. I've never actually been to Texas." Like, oh, okay. Well, glad you enjoy my recipe.
And it's one of those that I think that's happened a lot. That this is one that sells all over the country, and you can wholeheartedly say with no reservations, buy this kit and brew it, and you will like it. It's a great recipe. To me, this is one of those beers that I almost find something new that I like about it every time I buy it. Like I buy this off the shelf a lot, and every time I get it, I think I have a little bit different experience with it because there's so much that goes into it between the malt flavors and the chocolate flavors and the hop character and the yeast character and all that it's just you experience it different ways in different circumstances, and I can buy this beer over and over and over again and always have fun with it. So it's one I would encourage you to go on the Texas Brewing website and order this kit. I guarantee you'll like it. So what do y'all think of Chris's
I have to preface this with one thing, is that I did not know that y'all were coming in when I put this in a growler and decided to bring it in.
Well, that's perfect. I mean,
so this is a little bit destiny.
Yeah.
How do you feel about it?
Destiny, no taking.
No
that's
escaping
for me.
destiny.
That's for me. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's the movie guy. I think you did a really good job doing with this beer. I mean,
Okay.
Yeah, I really appreciate what you did, and I appreciate you sharing it. I mean, definitely good job.
That's the best thing about craft beer is and home brewing is that you get to share it with people.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Well, and that's why what gave me the that's what made us want to do something like that. It's like imitation is the finest form of flattery, and that's why I said don't mind giving you most of the recipes. Just come and show me what you did with it, because I'd really like to know. I mean, it's not just about the recipe. It's about you as a brewer. It's about your system. It's about, that's the beauty of being a home brewer and being a brewer, period. I've heard Matt tell me multiple times, he goes, I'd have a better chance of recreating somebody else's beer on my system than I would doing my beer on somebody else's system. So, I mean, as a brewer, you learn what you're doing. And so, but
that's
I think
an
with
interesting concept.
Yeah. Well, because
that makes a lot of sense, actually.
The recipe is only part of it. You've also got to know your system, and what is the efficiency that I'm going to get out of the system? How much do I need to put in? What's my boil off rate? It's not 4%. 4% of what? If I put a quart of water in and boil it for an hour, do I boil 4% of that water? No, I'm going to boil it dry. You've got certain characteristics with that system.
Hop utilization is a big thing.
That's a huge thing. So the results that you get it's so much process driven, which is why if you gave me somebody else's recipe and I've got my system and I know how to do it, I've got a pretty good shot at it. But I take my recipe, which I know really well, but I don't know your system, it'll be beer, but I'm not going to reproduce it. Not the first time. Not until I learn that system.
Oddly enough, I did this without temperature control. I didn't have a fridge to use the temperature control. I set my apartment's AC to 65 for 3 weeks.
So you were comfortable.
That was an expensive beer.
Yeah. It was a little expensive, yes. But
you could have bought a chest freezer for that much.
Probably, but it was also winter, so I just opened the door every once in a while.
Well, that helps.
Never turned on the AC, or never turned on the heater. But this was the third beer I ever made, and it was the only one that came out,
Oh, wow.
the way it was supposed to at the time on my new system, which I bought
shortly after starting. Yeah.
I bought a Grainfather, having never made a beer in my life.
Hey, man, if you're going to jump in with both feet, right?
And I did.
Cannonball.
That's what I like about today's homebrewer community is that you wouldn't have seen that 7-8 years ago. No. You were talking to people who were like, well, I don't know if I want to buy a pot that's 3 gallons. You know,
Can I make it in a 1 gallon?
people start
coffee
off
weight?
right now. A lot
Right.
more people start off right than used to. So.
Mhm.
So very cool. Let's kind of get into the styles that we're going to talk about here, because we usually get a little carried away with that, and we don't want to run too
We don't
terribly
get
long
carried
here.
away.
Carried
Talking about.
away? That
This
doesn't
is,
sound like
That hasn't happened for like a week.
This to me is a really interesting group of styles here when we're talking about light lagers, American lagers, that kind of thing. I've
Lighter.
taken James Lalonde's judging class a couple of times, and this is always where we start off, because it's category 1A, category 1B, 1C. So you start off with yellow fizzy beer is the beginning of the course, and everybody kind of groans at it because you're tasting Coors Light and Bud Light and that kind of thing. But I feel like for me, these styles I've gotten back to having a little bit of appreciation for. I had a Miller 64 at James Mead Brew and Fizzy Yellow Beer Fest, and I thought, what, this actually is not bad. It for what it is.
I watched him enjoy it.
Yeah,
It's truth.
and it's all about for what it is. What am I intending to do? I just want something light and refreshing. And so when we get in, who was going?
Like I remember several years back, I got it was a Sunday. I was off work. I'm gonna sit at home and I'm gonna watch football all day. It's gonna be great. So I'm gonna get some beer.
Mhm.
So I go to the store and I buy an 18 pack of like Bud 55. Well, 3 hours later, the 18 pack is done. I've peed 1,000 times. I'm not drunk. I'm just dehydrated.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so I go back and I buy a 6-pack of Sam Adams. I have 2 beers. I'm hammered, and I go to bed. So, you got to take it for what it's worth. Do you want
just
a bottle of water or do you want a beer?
It's just proper time management. I mean,
True.
what are you doing with your afternoon?
Well, that's exactly it. Is what do you want out of it? Like I go out to my in-laws in Tennessee, and we're hanging out by their pool and out at the dock or whatever all day, and I want to have some beers while we're hanging out all day. But I don't want to be completely hammered at my in-laws' house at 3:00 in the afternoon. So I'll buy PBR, Pabst Blue Ribbon.
I love me some
and
PBR.
I love that
PBR.
beer. It is what it is. It's
Ski
not
trip beer right
Yeah,
there.
right.
Yeah.
And I could drink that all day and be perfectly fine. And it doesn't ruin my day, and I don't take a nap at 3:00 in the afternoon and all that good stuff. So it's just.
But why not? Naps are great.
Well, yeah, but I don't have to take a nap. I'm doing it because I want to. Two different things.
I think
Man,
Greg's
there's a
building
lot of
something
noise
in the
going on.
background.
Yeah. Okay, they're building a barn.
Yeah, he's building a barn back there.
Yeah, it's a
Thought it
barn
was
raising.
Playing
So-
drums.
It's all about what you expect it to be, and it's the same type of thing on the other end of the spectrum when I talk to non-craft brewers or non-craft beer drinkers about drinking, say, a stout or something like that. And I say, well, do you like coffee? Well, yeah, I like coffee. Well, don't prepare your mouth for beer. Prepare your mouth for coffee before you drink that beer. And I think you're going to be a lot happier with what happens. So if you're thinking this is going to taste like a... Well, prepare your mouth. Yeah. Oh, they can't hear you? That's good. That makes for
Oh, he's
great
turning
radio
himself
when I
off.
respond
Too
to
bad,
nobody.
really.
Yeah.
Well, I respond to the voices in my head all the time, so it's kind of cool.
It's hard to tell which ones are coming from internally and which ones are actually
Yeah.
out there in the.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the American Light Lager, it to me, it's all summed up in the overall impression. Highly carbonated, very light-bodied, nearly flavorless lager designed to be consumed very cold, very refreshing, and thirst-quenching. And I remember the first class that I took with James, then you go to the aroma immediately. So you pour these things, and the aroma is low to no malt aroma, although it can be perceived as grainy, sweet, or corn-like if present. Hop aroma is light to none, with spicy or floral hop character if present. While a clean fermentation character is desirable, a light amount of yeast character is not a fault. Light DMS is not a fault. So
They're talking
basically,
about even
they're saying there's
apple fruitness. So the acetaldehyde.
Yes, so they're basically saying there's not much there. If there is something there, it's probably going to be corn and maybe a little bit of spiciness.
Maybe green apple, maybe not. But
Well,
corn.
and a lot of no, they say corn because you put corn in it, so corn is
yeah.
allowed if
Right.
if it's an ingredient. Maybe you're going to taste that.
Yeah, so that's what that is supposed to be, and this style guideline was written specifically for the Bud Light and the Coors Lights of the world, the Miller Lights and all that.
The comments, the comments section of American Light Lager says all of it. Designed to appeal to as broad a range of the general public as possible.
Exactly.
Strong flavors are a fault. Okay.
Right.
So if it tastes like anything, then it might offend somebody. Therefore, we don't want it to taste like anything at all. And that's one of the reasons why it needs to be served as cold as possible. Because when you chill it down, then if there is a flavor, well, heaven forbid, we don't want to be able to taste that.
Yeah, I mean, that's something people don't realize. If you know anything about beverages in general, the colder you have a beverage, the least amount of flavor you're going to get.
That's right. Have you ever tasted liquid nitrogen? It tastes like nothing.
There's a reason why.
And you never taste anything ever again.
There's a reason why Coors wants you to drink Coors Light as close to freezing as possible.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? It's better that way too.
Because it has no flavor.
Yeah.
Right.
So and Matt points out a really important part about this is that these type of
Liquid
beers
nitrogen?
originated right after Prohibition.
Correct.
And so prior to Prohibition, there was a lot of breweries in the U.S. We finally just, I
We've
think,
eclipsed
last
that.
year
Yeah, last
got
year.
to the number of breweries. So brewing was regional in America, a lot like it is if you go to Germany or something like that now. And so, people were used to their regional beer or something like that. All of these breweries went out of business, almost all of them. During Prohibition, they couldn't sustain themselves through those years when they couldn't make beer. Yeah. And so there was so few breweries coming out of Prohibition that a brewery had to brew a lot of beer and enough to service a very large patch of land. And so they had to appeal to the lowest common denominator. They had to put something out there that most people would like, not necessarily fill the void that people were missing while their favorite brewery went out of business, but just that they could brew something that, just to satisfy the quantity that America was going to drink and still be widely accepted. And that's where we ended up with this type of beer.
Stubby's got
you
some.
guys have had all these special treats. I brought y'all some really good ass beer.
Stubby got us
Good
some
ass
good
beer.
ass beer.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure if it's good ass beer or if it's good ass beer.
No,
So
it's
this-
good
this
ass
is-
beer.
It's for butt chugging, right?
It is.
I think it's for
where's-
penis snorkeling.
If you look at the can, it is in fact a good.
Yeah.
ass
Where's
beer.
our camera?
But is it a
here?
good, ass beer?
I believe it is a good ass.
So this
beer.
this beer may just very well go to demonstrate what we're talking about here.
There we go. Good.
There it
some
is,
glasses.
Beer.
If I can
Yeah,
get these
there
cups.
you go.
Who makes this?
Well, this is made by the fine folks
A
at
benevolent donkey brewing.
Rhinelander Brewing
Rhinelander
Company
Brewing
in Monroe, Wisconsin.
Yes.
All together now.
Have a good ass time, by the way.
So this is a very, very pale
We're either going to get
beer.
love
I need
having a
another
good
glass.
we're either
ass
going to make
time.
friends or we're going to make
That one.
enemies
Here's
or
something
fr-
for both.
or frenemies.
Frenemies.
Not a lot there. It's a little cream ale-ish to me.
Cream ale-ish. I like
Cream
it.
ale-ish.
Mailish.
Is that like
Cream ale-ish.
drink lots of
That's
beer
the name
on
of
the
my first
dock
girlfriend.
while fishing beers per Greg? He's not listening.
Can people
Salty
hear that?
Nickels.
See, right off the bat, I
I'm
smell
s-
something, so that's a flaw.
Yeah, there you
Does it smell like the men's room to you?
I mean,
It smells like
to the light lager style.
Because I think it smells like the men's room.
it smells skunked, and I just poured it out of a can. How is that
Yeah.
possible?
Ugh.
So I think the overall consensus
you
is
do
that
this
this
to
is
That's
does not live up to its name.
That's a good ass beer right there.
Yeah, well,
Good ass beer.
it's that never happens. The thing with the whole to style, it shouldn't taste like anything at all, and the colder the better. Okay, that is true to style, and perhaps that's one of the flaws of the beer that we're drinking here. This good ass beer just isn't cold enough. Maybe that's what
It
we're looking at
probably
here.
might be better if it was.
If we just added a drop of liquid
we
nitrogen.
just
in there,
read
it's-
that
yeah.
part, and then you come in and you bring a warm.
You know, I
supposed to
told
be
Chris
cold.
to put it in the freezer. You
And
know,
I left it in the other fridge that is
Yeah.
at, 45 degrees?
But one of the things I have about the American light lager style, and if you want to make a clone of an American light lager. This is what category 1A is about. This is what this is. It always has adjuncts to it. I mean, pretty much it's required in order to make it taste like what those adjunct light lagers taste like. If you want to make that kind of beer, you need to use the ingredients that they
Rice
make.
or corn.
Rice or corn, right?
If you're looking for Miller, do corn. If you're
You
looking
could
for
use
Bud,
dextrose.
But
Rice,
use rice, yeah.
If you thought about it.
And
True.
and the personal preference, I don't like those characteristics in the beer. And a lot of why this category is frequently as cold as it is, and always served as cold as they tell you to. Oh, we've got the coldest beer in town. It's 28 degrees. Okay, well, thank you. That just means I'm can I just have a glass of ice water then? Because that's probably about the same temperature. Well, it does. It's got nice scenery. It does. I will give it that. But I mean, really, there's no beer that should properly be served below about 36, 38 degrees Fahrenheit. And that includes the American light lager style, because properly it shouldn't be served at all. It's just, I don't like it. I just don't. I'm sorry.
Thing about that. If you don't like it, that's fine. But I don't particularly care for knocking something that somebody else does like. And
not at all.
I agree.
It is what it is. And if you don't like it, don't drink it. I don't. There's craft styles that I don't like either.
No.
I don't like cream ale. I would never order a cream ale.
I'm actually with you there.
Yeah, there are several different craft styles that I don't particularly care for at all. But if somebody likes them, more power to them. You make what people like and drink what you like, and that's what it's all about.
I also don't particularly care for chicken liver, but people love it, and
exactly
they want it.
Any
and okay, that's
liver
fine.
at all.
There's a difference between that and beer. Whereas
well,
with liver, there's the one kind, and beer, there's probably at least one out there that if you found it, you might like it. Like cream ale.
That's true.
I don't like them either. But Cali Creamin' out of that one brewery in California, but it also has vanilla in
vanilla.
it.
I mean,
which makes a whole difference
Yeah.
to that beer,
So if for reference, the recipes out of Classic Styles, which we talk about all the time, the American Light Lager is it's American 2-row or 6-row and flaked rice. The American Lager is American 2-row or 6-row and flaked rice. The premium American Lager is American 2-row or 6-row and flaked rice.
And so this kind of
beer,
it's kind of like an English bitter,
right? It's
where you're
low,
just talking about alcohol
a medium, or a
percentage.
high.
Yeah.
That's what they're talking about on those three styles, which are now a little bit different on the new guidelines. I think there's only 2.
Yeah.
And they may have moved one to another style, but they're two versions of the same beer. One's lower gravity, one's higher gravity.
But it really does come down to personal preference. I just don't like the flaked rice part. That's me. If other people love it, then that's great. And
like you were saying
apparently a lot of
earlier,
people do, and that's fantastic.
You could do the same thing, just do Pilsner.
Yeah.
To Matt's point, and to both of your point, there are some breweries out there that are doing these light lagers all malt.
Yeah, they're
doing a really good job with
That's
them.
right.
And I think it shows how you can really make the beer fantastic by a more traditional approach. What's interesting about it is actually when to use Budweiser as an example, they use they use corn or rice?
Rice.
Budweiser
use
rice.
Yeah. That was one of the things that actually long time ago when they were first establishing that brewery, rice was more expensive than barley was, and they actually adhered to using that ingredient because they wanted a specific result out of it. They thought of it as, we're trying to maintain our quality. Now that's not the case, but I did read a piece about the history of the Budweiser brewery where there was a time when it would have made more sense economically for them to go to all barley, but they stuck to that for a specific result. And again, you're talking about coming out of Prohibition, so you're talking about brewing to the lowest common denominator, and that was just a reality of the time. That's what you had to do. But it's not necessarily just put in there as we might think of it as just a cheaper way to add some alcohol and thin the thing out. He had a specific result in mind when he did that. So
and also to the defense of people pursuing this is one of the hardest beers to
Right.
actually make, because there is no place to hide any kind of flaws at all. I've got a friend who's been homebrewing as long as, he started the same time I did. He's been homebrewing forever, and his dad drinks nothing but Coors Light, and so he's been trying to brew a Coors Light clone forever, just to make a beer that, and he's given his dad all the different kinds of beers. He's won scads of awards, and no, not so much. He just wants his Coors Light, and so he keeps trying to brew that Coors Light clone. And it's like the white whale at this point. It's like, how do I make this beer less flavorful?
That's one of the struggles that we have when we have our classes. Is one of the first things Stubby talks about is what kind of beers do you like to drink, and what kind of beers would you like to make? And a lot of people say, well, I'm a Bud Light drinker, I'm a Coors Light drinker, I'm a Miller Light drinker. And the response is almost always, well, good luck trying to make that beer, because it's probably never going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You just kind of need to give up your aspirations
it certainly isn't going to be in your first 100 beers that you brew.
No.
Really,
not to say you can't do it, but
you better learn to like something along the way, because you're going to have a lot of beer to drink between now
long
and then.
Time.
Yeah.
I've 20 plus years, and I'm just now really getting into lagers, and it's still tough to do.
It is.
So don't expect that you can make a Bud Light clone in your first 5 to 10 beers.
Even taking the fast track like I did, skipping a lot of steps.
Yeah, you're just not going to do it.
I made 8 dark beers.
Right. Yeah. Like you're not going to know the process. You're not going to know the ins and outs. And like Matt said, it's really hard to hide a flaw. You can hide a flaw in some maltier beers, some hoppier beers. You can. It's easier to layer in a minor mistake.
No.
But with a lager,
this beer couldn't be
true.
simpler. The recipe for this beer couldn't be simpler, but the process is really complex in order to get the result. That's where the magic happens through most of these styles. It's not the recipe. It's not, okay, there's magical combination of ingredients. It's the process. It's the amount of tricks you have to play in order to do everything. They do it the hard way. The computers do it the hard way. That's,
we're talking about a 52 to 56 degree fermentation. You're talking about 10 days to 14 days of that. I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, well, the way these guys do this.
They're doing it. Yeah,
how they're doing it. Yeah,
this may come
a high
out
gravity
to you,
beer.
Yeah, between 2.8 to 4% alcohol, but they're brewing a 14% beer, and then they're adding carbonated water to it.
Right.
Have you ever had that beer?
Greater accomplishment, it's.
Have you ever had that beer? The actual.
I haven't. No,
I haven't either. No. I've heard about it though. It's like apparently it's pretty good.
I've been there where the fermenters are.
Yeah.
And seen what they also do is they hop it after it's fermented too. They put hop extract in it.
So they're brewing
after it's fermented.
They're brewing giant gravity beer, and then the hops are added at packaging. The carbonation is added at packaging, and these big breweries, they pump out. A distributor orders 20,000 cases of Coors Light, long neck, 6-packs. So that's what they pump out of those fermenters and mix with the carbonated water and the hop extract, and they get your long neck bottles. Well, then someone else orders the tall boy cans. Well, they pump that out of the another fermenter and do the exact same thing. So we kind of make fun of them a little bit, but geez, the science and the ability to do that.
If you ever have an opportunity to take a tour of one of these places, it's very, very impressive.
Lightning sold me on it.
It's insane. I have, and it's ridiculous.
Have you? Oh yeah, that's right. We did the Miller tour.
That's right.
That's right. You and I.
Right, yeah.
I forgot we were on that same one. And what was interesting about that too is that as these larger breweries have acquired other brands and they bring it into their production facilities, they don't just take and make the beer at that facility. They take the exact same way it's always been made, and they integrate all that machinery and process into what they've got. So when you go in the filtering section, there's 6 different filtering methods that are in there
Yeah.
because Schlitz uses one filtering method,
Right.
and Steel Reserve uses another one, and Keystone Light uses
in order to get it right.
and
Yeah.
it's funny to say that, but they really, really do pay attention to exactly everything that goes into that, and it's in the packaging. In the packaging section, there's some of them that are pasteurized. There are some of them that are packaged in a clean room. When you're in that brewery, it's like 6 breweries under one
Right.
roof. It's absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah, and I know Revolver just got picked up by Miller Coors, and what I understand, Miller Coors keeps coming back to Revolver's. Okay, here's our attempt at mass production. How did we get close? Like, yeah, okay, yeah. Okay, we'll go back and try it again. They're in that iteration right now, trying to
Recreate
farm
Blood and
out
Honey.
Blood and Honey
Yeah.
to get it to
Never
all the
gonna
other
happen.
places.
It will.
Yeah,
No.
Those guys
they'll-
can do anything.
they're gonna keep trying.
Local honey. It's never going to happen.
It'll happen.
Until he goes to
There's not that much honey in the
honey.
world. Yeah, you got to put the quotes
There-
around the
yeah,
word
Yeah,
honey.
chemical
he's never.
compound
Yeah.
It's
tastes
never
like
going to be. Never going to be the same. I mean, that beer's never the same batch to batch. So
As well, it should be for honey.
for local
Because
honey, right?
Local honey is going to change every
time.
2 months.
So
You've tried more than one batch?
yes, yes.
Sorry, I just
we've
don't
been
care for
given
that
more than-
particular beer.
Yes,
Yeah.
neither do I. But we've been given more than one of them.
But the science and engineering there is where you're hitting at, and
Mhm.
that might be one of the best things that we've been in the United States is that we've been doing in manufacturing is creating better ways and more efficient ways to create alcohol. I
That's
mean,
true.
think about it.
That's a good thought.
I mean,
You're correct.
If there's one thing we're good at, it's alcohol.
Well,
It's manufacturing and it's alcohol and hey,
It's manufacturing on
it's in the
a
night for a
very
while.
large scale.
It's
Right.
just a product just like anything else. I deal with manufacturing industry on like metal fabrication and automotive and that kind of thing. And it's the same type of thing. You can find small production facilities that are manufacturing things on small job shops on small scales, and everything doesn't come out the same. And then you can go to larger facilities where everything's robotic and all that, and they're turning things out to tolerances that nobody could ever hope to do in these smaller shops. It's the same exact thing. You're just manufacturing a product, and on a smaller scale, you're going to have wider variances and sloppier tolerances, and the big guys have the money and the time and the personnel to figure out how to dial everything in exactly how they want it. And that's just how it is. It's the economy of scale involved with manufacturing a product. So, I think the overall point in all of this, the whole discussion, is that while we knock this a lot because most of the people who drink light American lager don't really care that much about what they're drinking. They're just trying to consume alcohol, and they know that they've been drinking Coors Light since they've been stealing out of their dad's fridge when they were 13 years old, and so we get kind of snobby about it a little bit. But I think the overall takeaway from it is you have to recognize something for what it is, and it fills a need, and there's people who enjoy it, and that's a good thing. If people enjoy it, then let's make it, and if you don't enjoy it, then enjoy what it is you like, and that's okay. It's okay for everybody to like something different. So, and
That's right.
yeah, I don't know if anybody can hear Stubby.
He
no.
can't.
they,
They
Okay.
can't.
It's really
But, yeah,
throwing me off.
Anytime
Yeah.
you drink
But-
that beer, it's the same.
And-
It's
and on-
always the same.
and on the flip side of that, I guarantee everybody at this table has the one that when you're at the picnic that only has
Yeah.
the big beers.
Yeah.
It's like, I hope it's this one because I can drink this
Well,
one.
let's go
Yeah.
around. What is it, Mikey?
Man,
There's something. Come on.
Bud Light.
But really, Bud Light. I wouldn't have
Yeah.
guessed that, Tom.
Miller Lite.
I'm Miller Lite too.
Coors Banquet.
Nice.
See,
That doesn't
okay.
count.
It doesn't count?
Doesn't
Yeah.
count.
Yeah.
Banquet doesn't
Why
count
does
as a light
not?
beer.
That's a good point.
Okay.
You're not going to find Coors Banquet very
Denied.
often.
shoot.
So PBR
Um,
doesn't count. I
PB
mean,
I'd count PBR.
Well, okay, what does count? Are we talking about light
yeah, okay,
lagers?
yeah. What are our choices?
what-
Just your typically widely available, the kind of thing that you would show up to a barbecue and somebody might have. Coors
They'd-
Banquet.
Yeah,
I don't
okay.
know. I think you
All
might
right,
be
all
looking
right.
at a more discerning beer drinker actually
Yeah.
with that.
Possibly. Like Tecate, does that count?
There you go. It's
Okay.
got it. There
Yeah.
you go.
Yeah.
Greg.
Modelo.
Well, shoot. if
Modelo,
he's-
nice.
Modelo's good,
I
too,
would take
yeah.
Modelo now. Damn it.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
it-
Modelo's good.
It really,
Austin drinks
it
the hell
kind
out
of
of
had to
Modelo.
say light in the.
Yeah,
I mean,
I was going.
'cause
Oh, yeah,
Modelo's
Stubby's,
gonna be a
Stubby's doing
premium.
Lone Star.
Yeah, Stubby's going Lone
true.
Star.
Because Modelo's going to be a premium. It's not a light
It is
lager.
a special.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is
If
a special.
if it's got to
We
have
need regular.
a special.
if it's got to have the word light in the name, if I can do a Coors Banquet, I can probably do a Coors Light.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
Miller Lite is my go-to on that. Chris.
I absolutely cannot drink light beer.
Well, okay.
Any light beers that I've ever had give me migraines. But
Here's what I would
I can
say.
drink Lone Star and I can drink regular Coors.
What is
as
it?
my bottom barrels.
I would equate this out to
This is an
what is the
American
beer
lager.
you drink at a sporting event where you're paying $9 or $10 a piece for them, so you got to stomach it. What is it you're going to bring?
Yeah, Dos Equis is a good one. Stubby's chiming in with that one. I'll drink a
Yeah.
Dos Equis
Yeah.
any day.
Dos
I
Equis.
love Dos
I've
Equis.
never seen Dos Equis.
Although
at a
that's
sporting
one of
event.
the
Oh,
things.
no, they do the Tall Boys. I was just at well, this was a sporting event, but I was at a concert the other day.
Okay,
and
okay.
they had
Yeah.
it there,
Alright.
so.
That is probably my absolute favorite thing about Sam Adams Boston Lager is I can get it absolutely everywhere.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah.
Mostly for me too. The Dos Equis. I was at a concert in Dallas the other night, and I could have a couple Dos Equis and drive home. I'm okay. You know,
That's true.
over the course of a couple hours, I get there. I have a couple beers when I get there, and then I stop drinking beer, and I'm all right. Unlike the concerts that Stubby and I have gone to, because Stubby keeps walking up with Dale's Pale Ale, Tall Boys in his hand, and
Or Scotch.
That's a nice
yes,
concert
we
there.
ended the night with Dragon's Milk.
Oh my
also,
God.
yeah, that was a mistake. That was bad.
Dragon's Milk. Can you
Not
get
the-
Dragon's
Bad
Milk around
influence.
here?
What
Yes.
concert were you going to?
That was at the Bomb Factory in Dallas, so we went around the corner to, I don't know, some beer bar.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the Bomb Factory had Dale's Pale Ale, which is pretty good.
Still though.
Yep.
Speaking of Modelo, is there any open cans?
There are.
There's an
That-
open
that are
case
There's
right
not
some
now.
empty.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, well,
Can y'all really get Dragon's Milk this far north?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry.
South?
I keep referring to. I grew up in Houston. I forgot.
This
I'm in
Wow.
So
Cowboys
you're in
country.
Yankee territory now, huh?
Yeah.
damn near.
all right, here we go. I'm gonna try Modelo here.
Oh wow.
So the American light lagers are all the ones that are going to say light in the name. Then you go to American lager, which is pretty much the same thing. Much like Mikey said,
it's just
just
it's
with,
just
with a higher
larger
alcohol
Yeah.
percentage,
Yeah.
maybe a little bit more
Well,
flavor
there's
to it.
there's American Light Lager, American Lager, and American Premium Lager, and it's all the biggest difference between these. The American Light Lager is generally it's like up to 40%. I think I remember.
Yes, up to 40%.
Yeah, up to 40%.
But actually, that's on the American lager also.
Okay, and
Yeah.
but then the American Premium it's less and less and less. It's still some, but it's less. You get the premium, and it's like 25% or less normally. So it is very much like the Scottish 60, 70, 80. It's the same basic recipe. It's
Yeah.
just a little bit more of each.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
if
go through.
You know, like he's saying,
Or
if
even
you,
an English bitter,
Right,
same
if
time.
you look-
Exactly. Yeah, it's
if you
just
looked
bump,
at
bump,
the
bump.
old-
Yeah.
Yeah, you looked at the old guidelines or the old classic styles book. You did the Scottish 60, and then you kept the specialty malts the same, and you upped the base malt, and you got an 80, and you upped the base malt, and you got the wee heavy. They were all the same specialty grains, exactly. So you can essentially do that with these American light lagers and American lager, and then an American premium. You can keep that essentially the same amount of corn or rice, or if you're going to omit that altogether, and you're just going to increase the amount of Pilsner or
Yeah.
your 6-row, and you're gonna bump your ABV up. What
And-
is it?
And on the commercial scale, it's basically a matter of how much are you diluting it down?
Right.
Right.
Is it this
That's-
much water or
Right.
a
And
little
you're just
bit?
going to end up with a higher concentration of flavor. And, really, if you think about it in those terms, the people who are drinking the Coors Banquet and stuff like that, those are people who actually really like the flavor of beer.
Ironically, commercially, it looks like those are the beers that are actually starting to disappear, which
Yeah.
were their flagships.
Yeah, you're right.
Budweiser versus Bud Light.
Budweiser
Yeah.
is
Coors Banquet.
actually
Yeah,
doing
which one
terrible
sells
in
more?
sales.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Coors
And I would
versus
prefer
Coors Light.
Bud over.
You know,
See,
Coors
not
Banquet.
me. I would
Bud
take a
Light.
Bud Light over a regular Bud.
I'll
any day.
take Bud Light.
Yeah.
I mean Bud.
You know, look at
Mm.
High Life.
Yeah,
versus
absolutely.
High Life versus Miller Light.
But I mean,
See,
It's
and
the
there
light-
I would
it's-
take High Life. Actually, I love High Life. I think it's a great beer.
but Coors
it's-
is
it's
the
all-
champagne
it's
of
weird.
beers.
brother-in-law's favorite.
How could that disappear?
I will drink a banquet
That's a
Any
good beer,
day.
dude.
over Coors Light.
Yes. Yes, but
Yeah.
Budweiser, the regular, I guess once you concentrate the flavor of Budweiser and you can taste it, I don't like it.
I mean, I see what you're saying. I mean,
Yeah,
I totally see that.
I really grew up
Do you remember
really
Miller?
liking-
Anybody remember Miller?
only
Oh,
as
yeah.
Like just
a
Miller, not
ingredient.
like-
Miller. Yeah.
No,
just Miller.
Miller.
Just
Came
that.
out,
Yeah.
came out in the mid '90s and
Mhm.
lasted till maybe the late '90s.
The late '90s.
Yeah, it was like what was it? Red Can Miller.
Mm-hmm.
I only
It
ever
was their-
remember it as an ingredient in cooking.
It
because
was
my
it
mom
was
used to
their
make it
answer to
as a chicken.
Budweiser. Yeah, I mean we
Don't
drank the
ever
snot
cook
out
with
of that.
something you wouldn't drink.
That's true.
Well,
it's very true.
I was never cooking at the time.
Bud Dry, yes.
What about
Bud Ice?
Bud Dry,
Bud Dry,
Ice.
Bud Ice, Tartar Control Bud.
Tartar. No, when I was in high school and that we were value shoppers. The Bud Ice was what we went with, and that's what
Ice
made me-
House.
Like
yeah,
5%
Ice House,
off.
all that stuff. I
Yeah.
stopped drinking beer. I'm like, this is horrible. I don't want it. It's awful. And I actually stopped drinking when all my friends kept drinking and partying. That's how I learned to drive stick, because I could drive and no one else could. And it wasn't until I was 21 actually that I started drinking beer again. Well, all my friends had carried on through all of high school and after high school and all that. It was I always tell the story. It was always the Sam Adams commercials that Jim Cook had out in the. So that would have been 95-ish, I think.
Mhm.
Try my Samuel Adams Boston Lager. He sounded like Droopy,
Yeah.
the dog.
Oh yeah, you always go like this. I'm not a golden-throated bitch man. I'm actually the owner
That's
of the
exactly
company.
it. Yeah.
Holy crap! Wow, you're really not good at this, are you?
Most breweries spill more beer in a day than we produce.
Yeah.
And now they're like one of the biggest breweries in the
Yeah.
country. Yeah. But I remember buying a 22 of Samuel Adams Boston Lager and thinking, wow, I've never tasted anything like this before. This is incredible. And that's what got me liking beer again.
Mhm.
So I think we're completely off topic at this
The
point.
light lagers.
Absolutely.
We have gone down the
Rabbit hole.
yes.
But you know what, though? When you talk about light lagers and premium lagers, and there's no way to not get nostalgic.
Yeah.
Because
That's
we
true.
all drank these at one point.
Yeah.
It was the
Usually before you
gateway
knew beer,
for us. Yeah.
Usually when you were stealing it.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. Or
Could have
having a
rolling
bum
around
buy
the
it
back of a
for you.
truck.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
finding it in the woods. True story.
No, I've done that too.
I found a we found a 30 pack. I was a Boy Scout. We found a 30 pack of Budweiser in the middle of the woods. Don't know why it was abandoned. We gave it a good home.
Yeah,
Sure.
it's funny. When I was an early teenager, I had an incident where we found a bunch of beer too and drank it, got real drunk, and then my mom had to come pick me up. So it was the one time I got like in big trouble as a teenager for drinking. She to this day does not believe me that we found that pack of beer there. She thinks I made that story up. And I'm like, meh.
I've got a
I would
friend.
tell you now.
I've got a
Do you
friend.
think that could happen?
He does trips down the Grand Canyon, and there are certain spots on the Grand Canyon where there's an eddy along a real sharp face wall, and there'll be
Little
a beer
whirlpools.
that is always in the eddy. And one of the things is you kayak in with a beer. You go and you get the beer out of the eddy. You drink the beer while you're in the eddy, and you drop a beer off.
Mhm.
So there's always a beer
Yeah.
just spinning there in the river. It never leaves.
Keeping
Doesn't
cold.
Matter,
Yep.
doesn't matter what the water level is.
Uh-huh.
That beer is just spinning there. And then there's a couple places on the trip where most of these commercial rigs go down with every trip they go on. There's 30 cases of beer. Well, if it's a church group of 12-year-olds, those 30 cases of beer are never going to drink. So they'll dig a hole and put it on the beach. Right, right. But they'll dig a hole and they'll hide it in the beach somewhere so they can pick it up on the next run when
Enough of this Modelo.
they've got a college group that's drinking the snot out of the beer. So he'll run around with a metal detector and find the cases of beer and steal these cases of beer. So
I need,
Yeah, I'm lost,
Mike-
dude.
Mikey,
I'm lost.
we're talking about finding beer. I mean,
you got to
I'm
hook me
talking
up
about
with
my
this
friend
next trip.
looking for beer. It's
Well,
great.
I think this is the thing about these
mean-
kind of beers, light, American light, all of them is like most of that comes with some sort of backstory that everybody remembers in
Yeah.
some
Yeah,
way of
yeah.
drinking them, because that's usually the way we're all introduced, right? Most of us can't brew these at home. We want to, I know that people have. It usually takes a lot of effort to get to
It's
that
always
point.
impressive
Like
when
Matt,
someone
did your
does
friend,
it. Impressive.
has he been close? Your friend that you talked about
Oh,
brewing
yeah.
over and
Oh,
over
yeah.
again?
He's gotten pretty close.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, Tom
and,
knows him
and
too.
as a matter of fact, I mean, I was in the Blue Bonnet finals, and an American light lager was in the top 3 because
Yeah.
it was impossible to ignore how
Nice.
how perfect it was. Because again, that's not going to be in your first 20, 30 beers that
No.
you're
Right.
going to brew as a
Yeah.
home brewer.
No, no.
It
Yeah.
is hard.
When
It is
you-
meticulous on every
You'll be
When-
very
when you
driven
start-
if it is.
Yeah, when you start getting into that level is, okay, best to show at Bluebonnet, every single one of these beers is probably a better example in its category than most of the commercial examples out there. I mean, that's the level
Right.
of
Yeah.
competition that we're talking about. So eventually we get to a point where, okay, well, how do you decide? I've knocked every little tiny nitpicky flaw that I can find, and now we've still got 7 beers left. And then you start looking, it's like, well, I can't ignore the fact that this light lager has absolutely nothing wrong with it. And that is an impossible feat. Well, not impossible. Clearly, they did it. A lot of people have done it, but
It's a 95 percentile.
yeah, exactly. It's a very high bar to cross. This is a really good thing to try to hone your craft. If you're trying to practice something, if you want to really find out whether you can brew beer or not, well, brew one of these things and see if it comes out.
See how close you
See
get.
how close you get. Because if you can make this, you can make damn near anything. That's how difficult it is to make a beer that is that flawless without having a place to hide the flaws. I don't know what's going on.
Donor cycle.
Yeah.
Donor cycle.
Donor cycle. Yeah. Now this kind of style requires absolute understanding and honed practice of fundamentals. Thank you, Mike, for reiterating my point.
Well done there.
Yes.
You have
My
to
sentiments
really
exactly.
have your setup down pat, and you have to know your equipment and be able to program it correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In order to
And-
get
and-
even close to being
Well, and it's you've got to have the recipe's not that hard.
no.
The process has to be flawless.
It's a
you
regimen.
can't make any
It's
mistakes.
a regimen. Hot side regimen, your mash has got to be just right. Cold side regimen, you better be meticulous and clean.
Right.
Fermentation regimen, 52, little high. Might want to start at 48 and start bringing it
For
up.
those,
I mean,
definitely.
it's going to be meticulous all along. It's all about process, and that's a beautiful thing. I mean, because ultimately we do want to recreate the beer that we make. I mean, if it's a great beer, you want to try it again. You want to
Oh,
taste
yeah,
it again,
absolutely.
right? You want to taste
Yeah.
that beer again, and whether it be, from a craft brewer or from a macro, they better be creating the same beer across the country. And that's where
Yeah.
the manufacturing you were talking about
Yeah.
is really, to me, it's amazing because, hey, if Bud tastes different across the country, people notice it.
Yeah,
You're
they
not
do.
going to drink
right?
it. Yeah.
No, I mean earlier we were talking about the complexities of trying to brew. I'm trying to brew my beer on somebody else's system. Well, that's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're brewing the exact same beer, a really hard beer to make, on multiple systems across the world.
With different water sources and
Yeah.
agricultural products, which are
Right.
not even everywhere. Yeah, it's a really impressive thing to do.
Not
The
that
other
different
thing
on the
I'll say too
agricultural, but-
is that when you talk to some of these people who are like Coors Light drinkers for their whole life, you talk to somebody who's 50 years old, been drinking Coors Light all his life. That dude will know if you give him anything other than a Coors Light. Yeah, he probably has a better understanding of how his favorite beer tastes than anyone in this room has of how their favorite beer tastes. Could probably pick
Yeah.
it out in a triangle test more reliably than any of us could with our favorite beer, whatever that beer may be.
The
It-
next one.
The next one, right? Yeah,
That's his
Cold,
favorite. Yeah.
yeah.
He can always
So,
pick it out of a lineup. Hey, it's the one in my
There
hand.
is something to be said for somebody who is that intimately familiar with their beer. It's hard to brush that off and write it off as, oh, you just like it because it's watery and flavorless. No, that person knows exactly what they like out of that beer. So it's, I always go back to, let's not try to be too much of snobs about how we are. It's in the business I am. I'm in tools. You try not to be too much of a tool snob. Try not to be too much of a snob about anything you care about. Let's not take ourselves so seriously about every little thing. Let's just remember that we're doing this because we love it.
When I was selling wine, don't make fun of the person that comes in buying the White Zen. They're still buying wine.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, they're still putting money in your pocket. The person that's buying Coors Light, they're still drinking beer. That's still feeding essentially our industry. They might be the big bad guys, but
the White Zen's a good example. You're not drinking wine because you're trying to accomplish something. You're drinking it because you like it.
You like it.
Yeah. So if that's what somebody likes, let them like it.
And that happens every day. I see it at the tours at Rabbit Hole. They come in and they go, I really like these beers. I love the 10 and 6, and I love the Rapture. You're off with your red. And I look at them and go, so you found a beer of ours that you liked. They go, yeah, I love these. And I go, did my job right. We did our job.
Drink them. Yeah.
That's why we brew different beers.
Exactly.
That's why Bud brews different beers and why Coors brews different beers is because while they have a good market, they know that some people don't like their beer and they're trying to hit them with other styles, and that's the beauty of beer.
And it wouldn't be fun to go to different breweries if every Irish Red tasted the same or every IPA tasted the same or whatever. And so the nature of that is that some of them are going to be things you don't like or that just aren't to your preference. And that's what makes it fun to find one that is especially good or some little sweet spot that you think, man, I just really love this particular beer.
This is something to say about the styles that we're talking about, too. It's like you may not be hitting Coors Light, Bud Light, Miller Light, whatever, but if you are actually hitting a light American lager or hell, even an American
German
lager
Pils,
at this stage, because they're not that far apart, or even the international pale lager, what they are, if you're hitting it and it works for you, then you did your job right. You know what I mean? It's like the perfection doesn't have to be there to hit that exact style. And that's something that a lot of times too, if you're serving your beers to people who are the light lager drinkers, that's the only thing they've ever had, they're probably going to be okay with that beer. Versus your Sierra Nevada clone or a stout or anything like a Martzen. It's like they're going to be totally thrown off with something like that.
Yeah.
But if you give them that really light, easygoing, flavorless beer, then they're going to be happy.
Yeah. And it really depends on what they're looking for, too.
Right.
I mean, I've been to an awful lot of beer festivals where someone comes up and says, "What's the lightest beer you've got?" That's what I want. And I was like, okay, well, what do you mean by the lightest beer I've got? I'm thinking this in my head. I don't say it. But I'm thinking it's like, okay, well, the lightest in color, lightest in flavor, the one that weighs the least,
least calories.
Yeah, what do you mean by the lightest? But usually it means all those things. They're looking for basically what if someone comes to a beer festival where basically it's a celebration of craft beer and they come looking for the lightest beer. What that means. What that tells me is that someone drugged them here.
Yeah.
And and they're just looking for something that tastes like what they normally like. And it's good to have something to offer them. It's okay, this is you're not into craft beer. This isn't why you're here.
This is my basic beer.
Yeah. So here, let me try this.
And that's what's cool. That's what I like about that. Is
that
it's
being
important
said,
to include those people.
Absolutely. That being said, though, that beer, because we've got a Kolsch that we can use for that.
Well, and that. How does that work?
And I usually that's okay. Well, here's our Kolsch, and they'll say, you know what, I really like this. This is a really nice beer, and they'll drink it and they'll enjoy it, and then they'll go back and look for the next light beer. The Kolsch doesn't bring people from the macro light lagers into
Kolsch
the
doesn't
craft.
Bring all the boys to the yard.
Well, it brings them there briefly, and then they go back.
Sorry.
It's a detour.
Yeah, that's quite.
You gave them an experience.
Quite a detour there. Yeah, the beers that if you ask a serious craft beer drinker, someone who's really into craft beer and all the different styles, who used to be drinking the lighter beers, what was the beer that got you into craft beer? what was that? It's never a bridge beer. It's never a blonde ale or anything. It's like, well, I had this Belgian quad once, and it just blew my mind.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, I didn't know
actually.
beer could be like this. And it's always something like that. It's never like, well, I had this blonde ale. I was like, wow, that was kind of like what I liked, but a little bit more. And then
That's a really good point, man. Actually, what I was talking about earlier with the Samuel Adams Boston Lager.
Mm-hmm.
You go from Bud Ice to Sam Adams.
Yeah. So it has to be something that will catch your attention.
It's got to be a big one.
I hadn't thought of it like that before.
It doesn't have to be big in like, wow, this is a 14% behemoth. It doesn't have to be that.
There's a pretty big difference between what you were drinking and what you all of a sudden love.
You don't just tip your toe into the pool and then say, oh yeah, this water's nice. Let's just wade in. No, you got a cannonball. You got to just jump into the thing. And so normally what happens when we're at a festival like that and somebody asks me that question is I will give them a little splash of, usually it's Rapture Brown, actually. If I have it, if it's one of the ones I'm pouring, it's like, okay, I want you to try this one. It's okay if you don't like it. You're not going to offend me. Just try it. And more than half the time, it's like, I normally don't like dark beers, but I kind of like this one. Mm-hmm. Ah, okay. So you do actually like dark beers. You just never had one that was, that you really enjoyed. It's always a, wow, no, I don't like dark beers like Guinness because they're so thick and heavy. It's like, okay, that's just making my head hurt.
But it's
yeah. Okay, so have you had Guinness? But that's the kind of beer that will actually get people out of their comfort zone. And it's not a bad thing if all you want out of beer is to be in your comfort zone and drink, light lagers. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Okay. You tiptoed into craft beer. You didn't like it. You moved back to where you were. All right, that's fine. You do you. You do what you want. That's great. We're not for everyone. That's why we make more than one different kind of beer. I hope you enjoy
Bobo.
Yeah, I hope you enjoy the El Canejo. I hope you enjoy the 561 Kolsch. I hope you enjoy some other beers that I can brew that will appeal to the kind of flavors that you're looking for. If you want to branch out, then I've got things for that too.
I think
we make more than one kind of beer.
I think it's really easy for us to project here that we're all the cannonballers. Everybody at this table is the cannonballer. I don't think that that's everybody, and I don't think that's a problem.
Yeah.
Well, and
so I think that's why, again, looking at a craft brewery portfolio, it's really important to look at it and say, you know what, you're brewing beer for other people. You want to brew beer that you like, and you want to brew beer that's accepted, but you want to ultimately give them something different that they haven't had. And whether that be an interpretation of a lighter lager, such as El Canejo, or Nito Bandito and something like that,
right,
or an imperial milk stout that's been bourbon aged, it's easy for us to say we want to all be the cannonballers, but we're not. And
see, and I think the flip side of this, what we're talking about, is taking somebody and telling them, hey, get out of your comfort zone a little bit and try something that maybe you think you don't like, but you haven't really tried it before or really gone into it with an open mind. I think when you talk about light American lagers and American lagers like this, the flip side of that is, as a craft beer lover and as a brewer and that kind of thing, maybe go back and try some of these beers that you first drank that made you think, hey, I kind of like this, and go back and taste them with your palate now, where you can pick out certain flavors and you can enjoy what it is you're drinking, and maybe just accept something for, this is what it is. This is something I can drink out by the pool on a hot day and just enjoy. Because I think a lot of people get completely away from these, and there are people out there that would never touch any of these light American lagers or these American lagers. And maybe if they went back, now that they have a better palate and a better understanding of what they do and don't like, that they would enjoy these things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's really what's happened for me, and obviously there is the business aspect of it where a lot of us don't want to support AB InBev or Miller, Coors, or Constellation Brands or any of these, and that's fine. Do what you can in that respect, but. I personally think that if you go back and try some of these, you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
I distinctly remember going back and trying Budweiser for the first time in like 8 years after drinking nothing but craft beer and very hoppy beers and things so dark you can't see the sun through it on a hot day, and trying a Budweiser and going, this is sweet and light.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember it tasting anything like this.
Right. Because now you understand the
bitter.
flavors.
Yeah.
You know.
It is, and I've actually noticed this a lot with people as they go into their craft beer journey, as it were. It's cyclical.
Yes.
It's kind of a cycle, because
Very much so.
it'll actually start with I like light beers, light lagers. Wow, okay, this is actually an interesting flavor. I kind of like these kinds of
I like
beers.
these pale ales.
What else is there? Oh wow, oh crap! I've got to have all these flavors. What else is there? I want everything. Oh, what's the biggest beer I can get? What's weird? Interesting things. I'm starting to get a little bit tired of all this weird stuff. I kind of like this style. You know what? I'd like to just kind of kick back in my back porch and have some beer. Yeah, something light and low alcohol. That's pretty nice.
Right? Yeah.
It's kind of that whole cycle.
Yeah. And it was like that for me with sour beers. When I first tasted a sour beer, I was like, oh my God, I've never tasted anything like this before. I need more of this. Give me any sour beer I could find.
Right.
The more sour, the better. And sour. Give me this. And then you hit a point where you're like, oh, okay, this is getting really, really sour. I want something I can enjoy a little bit more. And you kind of come down off that peak and you look for something a little more balanced and nuanced and that kind of thing. You always go through an arc.
Yeah.
And kind of you end up coming back to where you started.
You don't necessarily come all the way back. It's not like you come, okay, now I'm just craving Bud Light again.
No, but you appreciate more.
But you start appreciating it. Exactly. You start appreciating, I don't need to be assaulted and pounded into submission
You're talking about this journey like it's over years. This is over days, if you really think about it. I mean, it could be. I mean, your tastes change. I mean, sometimes you want to get kicked in the face with a big imperial stout.
Well, that's a good point too.
And sometimes you just want to go out there, have a couple of beers. None of us are going out there and
that's a really good point, Tom. Actually, because I come home every night and I'm like, okay, which one am I? Now I've got 5 different beers of my own on tap and a few different ones in the freezer. What is it I feel like tonight? And you're right. It totally does change from day to day or over course of a few days, where I'm really into this barrel aged thing I've got right now, and then maybe in the next few days I just want to have some cider or something like that. And that's a very good point.
I'm tired of being kicked in the face.
Kind of like what did you say your favorite beer was?
Hopefully the next one.
Right, exactly. It's gonna be whatever one of my hands.
So are we going to talk about the German Pils? Because I have a really good Glockenspiel story about German Pilsners.
Well, I think probably what we should do is have you guys back again sometime and talk more about that. I think
you guys.
The German Pils really falls outside of what we were talking about tonight. And actually, we could probably spend another 40 minutes.
I saw question marks in German
Pils.
Right. And I thought Greg brought it up before.
So in upcoming episodes, we hope to have a few more guests in studio, and we'll continue coverage of all your favorite styles. So hopefully we get the rabbit hole guys back here again. Maybe we can talk about Pilsners and that kind of thing. Yeah. Again, please make sure to go to Patreon and check out patreon.com/ComeABrewItRadio to see how you can support the show. We can use every little bit of help we can get, and it doesn't take a lot from you. Thanks again for listening to Come at Brew It Radio, and be sure to share with your friends on social media. Give us some ratings on iTunes and Stitcher, and send any ideas or comments to info@texasbrewing.com. Also, you can always check in on the Brew Days of the Guys at their brew-focused Facebook pages at Brew with Stubby, Brew with Brando, Brew with Mikey B, Brew with Pete, and Brew with Greg.
And now Brew with Chris.
Oh, and now we've got Brew with Chris also. Right on. All right.
You're
no longer the FNG. All right.
Yeah.
There's nothing on it yet, but the hopes to be soon.
But it's there.
Well, it took me a while to get anything on mine. So
and there's still nothing there.
No, there's a lot there now, actually. I'm good now. So with that,
we like
come
to
and
say,
come and brew
come
it.
and brew
it. Thanks for having us out, guys.
My papers aren't flying anywhere. That's just
all right.
They went behind you.
Sometimes your papers fly, and sometimes they flop.
And sometimes you play Mikey versus